I analyzed all 500 Hallmark Christmas movies to finally pin down the recipe that they all follow. Have you ever wondered why these movies feel like a warm, predictable hug or a perfectly formulaic binge? Things like 65% having Christmas right in the title. But as we lay out our first ingredient, it shows up everywhere. The trope of opposites attract appears in 178 movies. Now, once we lay out all of the ingredients, we'll use them to crown the Hallmarkiest Christmas movie of all time. So grab your cocoa and let's dive in. Hallmark started as a greeting card company in 1910, but it wasn't until 1951 that they stepped into holiday television with A Mall and the Night Visitors, the very first Hallmark Hall of Fame special. For decades, the Hall of Fame leaned prestige, winning awards for dramas, with Christmas appearing only occasionally. Between 1951 and 2000, there were just 8 Christmas Hall of Fame specials total. The real shift came with the launch of the Hallmark Channel in 2001. By 2002, they were airing 3 Christmas movies, and in 2009, Countdown to Christmas officially began with only 4 premieres. That was also the year my then girlfriend, now wife, introduced me to my first Hallmark Christmas movie, Mrs. Miracle, a gateway movie if there ever was one. From there, the growth was explosive. Hallmark Mysteries joined the lineup in 2013, and Hallmark Plus premiered its first original in 2021. What used to be a holiday footnote has now become the brand's beating heart. And then there's 2025. It's the first year since 2005 where Hallmark released fewer Christmas movies than the year before, and not by a little. So is it a rebuilding year, the new normal, or the start of a longer slowdown? Only time will tell. For this analysis, I cast a wide net. Starting with the Hallmark Hall of Fame, I included every Christmas release, even the earliest specials. On the Hallmark Channel, I counted every Christmas set film from the pre-Countdown era, and from 2019 onward, everything under Countdown to Christmas. I also added the Miracles of Christmas movies on Hallmark Mysteries, Christmas in July releases, and the Hallmark Plus originals. While almost all of these are Christmas stories, about 17 spotlight another holiday as well, including Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, New Year's, Halloween, and even Kwanzaa. The release calendar has stretched as well. Christmas in July became a yearly event in 2015, and October premieres started showing up consistently in 2016. Across the entirety of Hallmark Christmas releases, about 3% premiered in July, 9% in October, and nearly 37% in December. And the majority, more than half, debuted in November. When I dug into the data, the titles of Hallmark Christmas movies showed some of the strongest patterns. That might not sound like a big deal after all. A title is just marketing, but for Hallmark, it's branding. This sameness is very purposeful. It makes their movies instantly recognizable, even if you can't remember which ones you've already watched. Now, the biggest pattern is the word Christmas. Overall, about 2/3 of Hallmark Christmas movies have it in the title. Though since 2021, the trend has dropped sharply. 2024 was down to just 38%. Right after Christmas, the next most common words aren't even close. Holiday at 31, love 16, Santa 14, and time at 11. And it's not just the words. The entire title formulas repeat again and again. The most common patterns are the Christmas blank, a blank Christmas, blank for Christmas, a Christmas blank, Christmas in blank, and blank of Christmas. To really show you how formulaic it gets, let's just rattle off a few. The Christmas ornament, the Christmas train, the Christmas cottage, the Christmas club, the Christmas bow, Christmas in Evergreen, Christmas in Canaan, Christmas in Conway, Christmas in Homestead, Christmas in Montana, Christmas in Tahoe, the Santa class, the Santa incident, the Santa stakeout, the Santa suit, the Santa summit, it's Christmas Carol, and it's Christmas Eve. Hallmark clearly knows its naming templates. Now, before we look at how these title patterns rise and fall over time, there's just one quick thing to explain. Throughout this analysis, you'll hear me mention something called a Z-score. For our purposes, think of it as a measure of Hallmarkiness. A high score means a pattern shows up way more often than you'd expect, but a negative score means it's actually un-Hallmark. You're really seeing how strong they are as ingredients in the Hallmark recipe. And when we track those title patterns over time, you can see exactly when the formula peaked and how quickly it began to cool off. Since 2022, the Z-scores for these title structures have dropped, sometimes dramatically. And that shift lines up with some noticeably different yet still festive holiday titles. Trivia at St. Nick's, Sugar Plumbed, and even hashtag Xmas. Are they running out of Christmas combinations or just testing a new era? Either way, at 65% inclusion, this officially becomes ingredient number 2 in our Hallmark recipe. Titles that contain Christmas. When people think Hallmark Christmas movies, they think of familiar faces. In 2008, Candace Cameron Bure starred in Moonlight and Mistletoe. By 2012, Lacey Chabert was in Matchmaker Santa, and Andrew Walker was in A Bride for Christmas. Since then, all three have gone on to star in over 10 Hallmark Christmas movies, and they're not alone. If we look at the numbers, Hallmark really does reuse its favorites. Lacey leads the pack with 16 Christmas movies, followed by Andrew Walker at 14, Paul Campbell with 12, and Tyler Hines with 11. And below them, there's a whole tier of regulars sitting at 10 each. On average, the top 2 billed actors in any Hallmark Christmas movie have appeared in 8 Hallmark Christmas movies between them. Only about 11% of all movies feature a pair of leads who are both making their only Hallmark Christmas appearance. It's one of the not-so-secret ingredients. When we break down the casting even further, there's a clear pattern. 87% of Hallmark Christmas movies are led by a female protagonist, and just 13% by a male protagonist. Hallmark knows its audience, and the main character is almost always one the viewers are meant to connect with. Age is another predictable part of the formula. The most common age for a Hallmark Christmas lead at release is 37 years old. More than half of all leads fall somewhere in their 30s, about 30% in their 40s, and only about 7% are in their 20s. When you look at how the leads pair up, it gets even more clear. About 85% of movies have a female protagonist paired with a male partner. A male protagonist paired with a female partner accounts for about 11%. 2 female leads appear in about 6%, and 2 male leads only around 3%. And the age gap between the two is usually tiny. Over half of all the pairings are less than 5 years apart, and 1 year is the single most common difference. The classic May-December romance in a Hallmark is usually more of a May and slightly later May. There are outliers, like Call Me Mrs. Miracle from 2010, where Doris Roberts, then 85, played the title role opposite Jewel Staite, who was 28. Although that definitely isn't meant to be a mistletoe romance between the leads. Now, tell me in the comments, who is your favorite Hallmark actor? Whose movies will you never miss? When we look at Hallmark character names, they are some of the most ordinary you will find. And that's by design. I cleaned up the data by standardizing nicknames, so Lizzie became Elizabeth and Mike became Michael. And once everything was grouped, the most common names were exactly what you'd expect. Elizabeth and Michael are tied for the top 2 spots at 18 appearances each. Catherine and Jack both show up 14 times. And right behind are Jacob, Nicholas, David, Emily, Matthew, and Benjamin. These are classic, timeless names, easy for viewers to project themselves on, and perfectly safe for Hallmark's brand of cozy, familiar storytelling. But what about Christmassy names? Online parodies make it seem like every Hallmark Christmas movie is led by someone named Holly, Joy, or Noel. But the truth is, not even close. Out of about 500 movies, only 25 feature a Christmas theme named among the top 2 characters. That's it. There was a small spike in the early Hallmark Channel era, but today you're lucky if you get even one a year. Of course, there's a true standout here. It's Christmas Carol from 2012, the rare film that managed to give us both a Carol and an Eve in the same movie. Just like with actors, Hallmark has a stable of writers and directors that they come back to every year. On the writing side, Tracy Andreen leads the pack with 19 Christmas credits. Rick Garman and Joy Botkin are right behind her with 17 each. These are the architects behind Hallmark's holiday formula. People that know exactly how much snow, small town charm, and bickering go into the mix. And it's the same story behind the camera. Terry Ingram is the most prolific Christmas director with 17 films. Then you have David Winning and Jeff Beasley at 13 each, and a whole group of directors clustered right behind. If you've watched even a handful of Hallmark Christmas movies, you've seen their work, whether you realize it or not. And then we get to the double duty stars, the people who can act and write or direct. Paul Campbell is the clearest example. With 12 acting credits and 4 writing credits, this puts him in a category of his own. Kimberly Sestad has 8 acting roles and 3 writing credits. Corey Sevier has both directing and acting credits, and others like Alicia Witt, Jonathan Bennett, and Nikki DeLoach have crossed over as well. It's basically a Hallmark punch card. Act in 5 movies and you get to write the 6th. And since we're building the Hallmark recipe as we go, this becomes our next ingredient: returning cast and crew, used generously. For this next part, I wanted to break down the story ingredients that make up each Hallmark Christmas movie. The jobs, the settings, the tropes, and of course, the romance. To do that, I pulled the official movie blurbs from Hallmark for all 500 Christmas films, but I supplemented them with the synopsises from IMDb and TMDb. They're short, but they hit the big beats, which makes them perfect for spotting patterns. I ran all of those descriptions through a natural language processor, cleaned and standardized everything, and grouped similar ideas together. So all teachers became education education, all bakeries fell under food industry. Out of the process came 4 of Hallmark's biggest ingredients. When you look at the jobs Hallmark gives its leads, especially the protagonists, who are overwhelmingly female, they lean heavily towards approachable everyday careers. The 5 most common are journalists, musicians, teachers, writers, and healthcare workers, all landing between 16 and 19 movies each. Then you've got your Hallmark essentials: business owners, food industry characters, and of course, event planners, who are realistically rare, but in Hallmark show up everywhere. Love interests skew very differently. CEOs and executives lead by a mile with 24 movies, followed by musicians, food industry roles, health workers, soldiers, and teachers. And then comes the wild card category: supernatural roles, angels, magical strangers, or characters connected to Santa himself. That cluster pops up 14 times, which is more than journalists, royalty, or lawyers. Put the 2 charts together and the most typical pairing becomes obvious: the grounded career or community-focused protagonist matched with a high-powered executive. It's like LinkedIn, but with much more mistletoe. Small towns absolutely dominate Hallmark settings. 165 movies, more than 4 times the number set in a big city. And speaking of cities, New York is the only one that consistently gets named. Everywhere else is just the city, a vague place you're meant to leave behind. The next most common backdrop is the family home, with 88 movies centered on cozy houses that look straight out of a snow globe. Then come the festive venues, schools, inns, tree farms, and the occasional grand estate. And yes, Hallmark occasionally stamps the passport with places like Scotland and Rome. But even then, it feels just like a small town, just with a European accent. And what you rarely see: offices, airports, or apartments. Hallmark doesn't love fluorescent lighting, it's really here for the string lighting. And that brings us to our next Hallmark ingredient: the cozy small town setting with 165 plus movies. On occasion, Hallmark movies may look slightly different, but underneath, the story beats are very familiar. The most common trope by a mile, like we talked about earlier, is opposites attract. It's got 187 movies leaning on this formula. The big city woman meets the small town man. A Christmas enthusiast melts the heart of a business first Grinch. Corporate execs clash with a local shop owner. You've seen it, we've all seen it. Hallmark knows it works. Right behind that is the Christmas event: 172 movies built around saving a pageant, a parade, tree lighting, or a festival. Because in Hallmark world, if the Christmas fair gets canceled, society collapses by New Year's. Next come the emotional resets: found family, new beginning, and healing. These are the heart of Hallmark. Stories about belonging, rediscovering purpose, and finding people who always seem to have a tin of cookies ready just for you. Then the magical layer: we've got miracles, angels, mysterious strangers, enough sparkle to feel whimsical without going full fantasy. Other tropes round out the mix: returning home, single parent stories, rekindled romances, and family legacies like inheriting the family inn, bakery, or tree farm. Mix it all together and you don't just get a plot, you get a ritual. Predictable, sure, but comforting always. And romance isn't just a theme in Hallmark Christmas movies, it's a force of nature. Out of more than 500 films, 85% feature a brand new or rekindled love story. That means meeting someone new or bumping into the ex who just happens to be in town for the holidays. What you don't see very often are couples who already start the movie together. Hallmark is here for the spark, not for the maintenance. But it wasn't always that way. In the old Hallmark Hall of Fame specials, romance only popped up about a quarter of the time. By the 2010s, it became standard, and today it's close to 9 out of 10 across all Hallmark channels. Because at the end of the day, the parades, the cookie contests, they're just the backdrop. The heart is that final kiss under the mistletoe, or in a light tunnel, or in front of Santa, or an empty football stadium, or a carousel, in a parade, in a church. To tie everything together, I combined all of our Z-scores into one combined Hallmarkiest score. The mix of ingredients that make a movie feel truly Hallmark. Each part that we've looked at, the titles, the actors, the names, the creative team, and the story elements all blend together into one single score. Not all of these ingredients are equal though. Actors make up about a quarter of the recipe, while story features like occupation, setting, tropes, and romances are more than a third. Titles, names, and the creative teams add the final touches. On screen, you can see the full breakdown, showing exactly how we measured the Hallmarkiness of every movie. How closely did each year follow the Hallmark recipe? Well, the Hall of Fame era scores are low and inconsistent. These early projects weren't aiming for the same formula we recognize today. From 2002 to 2007, in the first years of the Hallmark Channel, you can see them experimenting. Some movies leaned into the recipe, others didn't quite fit. 2008 to 2010 marks the lowest point. The core elements that make up the Hallmark feel just weren't there. But starting in 2010 through 2015, the numbers steadily climb. This is Hallmark tightening up and really finding its voice. From 2016 to 2019, they hit peak consistency. This is where the recipe was most refined and the results show up clearly in the data. Since 2020, you can see some variations again. They're testing out new approaches, but still keeping one foot firmly in the Hallmark style. Based on the Hallmark recipe scoring, the movie that followed the recipe the closest in 2025 is Christmas at the Catnip Cafe, and it's set to be released on Sunday, November 30th. It scored especially high because of 18 Hallmark Christmas movies between the two leads, 1 year age difference between them, and then it takes place in a small town in upstate New York where someone returns home, where opposites attract, all with a found family. You'll have to check it out for yourself and see if you agree that it's the Hallmarkiest film of the year. Now, before we get to the top, let's look at the other end of the spectrum. When you pull out the Hall of Fame films, the lowest scores on the Hallmark recipe are The National Tree, Help for the Holidays, Our First Christmas, Christmas with Tucker, and then there's Battle of the Bulbs. This one sits at the very bottom of the Hallmarkiest scoring. Instead of a romance, the movie centers on two rival neighbors, played by Daniel Stern and Matt Frewer, both in their 50s, both making their only leading appearance in a Hallmark Christmas movie. The writers had no other Hallmark credits, so it didn't draw from the studio's usual stable of creators. And while the tropes of rivalry, contest, and family celebration are present, they just don't carry the same weight in the Hallmark recipe as a small town romance, a Christmas miracle, or opposites attracting. But now for the fun part. The most Hallmarky Christmas movies ever made according to the data. At number 5, we have Time for Us to Come Home for Christmas from 2020, and right above it is Time for You to Come Home for Christmas from 2019. A Christmas Cookie Catastrophe lands at number 3 from 2022, and Pride, Prejudice, and Mistletoe in the second spot. But sitting heads and shoulders above the rest is Christmas in Love. This movie doesn't just top the list, it actually blows away the competition. It's the only movie without a single below average score across all categories. The stars here are Brooke D'Orsay and Daniel Lissing, who together have appeared in 16 Hallmark Christmas films. The title checks all the boxes. Yes, it literally includes both Christmas and love. The casting hit the right age, gender balance. The writers and directors have a combined 32 credits, giving it Hallmark veteran power. And the story, a small town baker, opposites attracting, a Christmas event, and a family tradition all baked in. If you had to design the perfect Hallmark movie in a lab, this is it. Christmas in Love is officially the Hallmarkiest Christmas movie of all time. So where do Hallmark Christmas movies go from here? I expect we will see the Hallmarkiest score of each film rise from early 2020s. Hallmark has even brought back some of its longtime programming leadership this year, which suggests a return to the consistency that defined their peak. Whether I'm right or wrong, one thing's for sure. Hallmark has baked this tradition so deeply into the holiday season that it isn't going anywhere. The recipe may get tweaked over time, but the heart of it will always be here for the long haul. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please take a moment to like it and check out the video on the screen. YouTube thinks you'll really like it.